Well, it looks like we're live. And so we'll just excuse me, hang out for a couple of minutes and wait for you all to jump in, join in. And it is Monday and time for another Monday Mastery live at 5. And it's been an interesting weekend, and you can see I'm wearing uh my Chiefs jersey today in honor of their victory last night. They had a pretty good run, or a pretty good route of the Buffalo Bills. So they are going to the Super Bowl in a couple of weeks. And I'm disappointed in the Green Bay Packers. I was hoping for them to make it, but such is life. So I think it'll be a good Super Bowl either way, and I'll have to be rooting for the local team, the Kansas City Chiefs. And so anyway, I hope you all had a great week last week and are looking forward to another good week. Excuse me, another good week this week. It's starting off cold and rainy here in Kansas City, and it's just kind of a gray, dreary winter day. And it's just kind of one of those days that I had to get out and run some errands, and I just wasn't dressed warm enough, and it was I want summer again. So anyway, well, why don't we get started? It's been a crazy again. Hey, Mark, thank you. Mark says, looking good with that jersey. Yeah, thank you. It was, it's actually last season's, I think it's the AFC or the Super Bowl, Travis Kelce jersey. So anyway, it was fun to watch them last year. It'll be fun to watch them again this year, because they always put on an entertaining game. Deborah says, "Go Chiefs!" So maybe that'll be our theme of the day today. It was just such a crazy busy week last week, and the weekend was very busy for me. And I really and part of the reason, and I'll share some of that. Hey, Sherry, thanks for joining in. Nancy says, ditto the weather in Kentucky too. Cold and rainy there. It was just kind of I'll share a little bit about the craziness. A friend of mine had told me about, I don't know if any of you are familiar with Tony Robbins or Anthony Robbins. He's been around for, I think he said, about 44 years. And he's been basically a life motivational coach and a business coach, and coaches in a couple of other different areas. Just a very, very, very smart man. And I drifted away from him for a while, and a friend of mine said, hey, he's got this thing going on this weekend, or it's a 5-day event. It's free. You don't have to pay anything. And it's been a while since I listened to him, and it was good to listen to what he had to say. Now, the majority of everything he shared. Hey, Lois, thanks for joining in. Oh, nice, 75 degrees today. Beautiful. Most of what he shared is things that I heard him teach 20 years ago, but it was good to get a refresher, and it kind of made me think of a lot of the things in life that and a lot of his teachings that I've gone through that over the years. That it's always good to get that refresher and bring it back to the top of your memory, and it just helps with whatever issues, at least for me, whatever issues I'm dealing with, and helps me in my business, and helps me coach you all. So anyway, that was a 5-day process, and I was able to sit through 3 of the 5 days, and I'll have to go back and catch up on the other stuff. But it was very, very interesting. If you get a chance to listen to him or watch him, do it. He's very, very. He has some really good down to earth ideas and on how to get you to do the things that you want and you need to do. So anyway, that was the excitement of my weekend, I guess, and it's just caused me to think of a lot of different things. So today, that's why I'm the subject is just random thoughts, because I've had so many random thoughts, and I'm not going to go through anything in particular. There's none that are of any greater importance, and maybe some of these will connect with you, maybe some of them won't, but feel free to share some of your thoughts and ideas along the way. And one of the things that I've thought is, or that I've recognized over the years, is that you only control one half of any relationship, because you can only control you. So many times I've had people come to me and say, Rick, help me on my work with my husband or my boyfriend or my girlfriend, help her. And basically what they want me to do is change them so that they fit your particular wants, needs, or desires in a relationship. And that's not how it works. You control your half of the relationship. You control your actions. You control your reactions. And until you realize that, you can be pointing. I always let me get that. I'll point right at you guys. If I'm pointing right at you all, then I've got one finger pointing at you, but I've got 3 more pointing back at me. So I have to take the responsibility for all my actions, all my reactions. And so when we learn that we only control one half, we recognize, or we should recognize, that we don't control the other person, or we shouldn't be trying to control them. We only have control over what we do, think, or say. Then everything else is up to the other person. So it's up to your partner. So, when we look at relationships, we've got to remember that we only control half of it, or we only influence half of it. Hey, Sylvia, thanks for joining in. Next one, don't hang on to a relationship that isn't working for you. This is a huge, huge, huge issue. With so many, and I've been there. You recognize that the relationship isn't the right relationship, but yet you want to try to make it work. You want to try to coax every last ounce of energy out of that relationship. And when you recognize it's not the right relationship, then it's time to just cut your losses, so to speak, because so many of us. Hey, Sophie, thanks for joining in. Sophie's joining us from the UK, and it's 5:00 here. So I'm thinking that Sophie is at about 11:00 in your time. So anyway, we're when we try to hang on to these relationships, and ladies, I mentioned this a week or so ago, that you all love to put in 110%, and you don't want to let go of a relationship until you've done every possible thing that you can to make that relationship work, even though you may recognize that no, this isn't the right relationship. you may recognize that there are a lot of red flags with this relationship. And I'm a big proponent of you can put in a little bit of effort, but when you start seeing, and let me walk that one back, you should put in a great effort for a relationship. But when you see red flags, that's a time that you need to start reevaluating and probably walking away, because the red flags, they generally aren't going to change, because that means changing someone. Now, if that someone is going to be you, if you're the one that's going to change, then you have to ask yourself, well, am I changing for the relationship just to keep the relationship? Or is this a change that will make me a better person? And unless you're doing it to make yourself a better person, then you're starting to lose yourself in a relationship that just is going to be an unhealthy, unhappy relationship, because no matter what you do and no matter how hard you try, it will never be an extraordinary relationship. So it's so important to recognize, and I know it sounds I know it sounds cold. I know it sounds like I don't encourage putting in a lot of effort to make a relationship work, but I also believe that we only have a finite time on this planet, and while we're here, there's no point in being in the wrong relationship or being with the wrong person. And I try to emphasize this every time. It doesn't necessarily make you or the other person a bad person. It doesn't mean either one of you is wrong. It just means that the relationship is not a good, healthy relationship. And you should all be striving for that great, extraordinary, healthy relationship. No goofing around, no wasting time in mediocre relationships. And Lord knows I've been there. I've done it. You get comfortable with somebody, and it's easy to stick around just because it's easy. They're comfortable. They know your story. You don't have to start all over again. And it's one of those things that you really have to think about what you're doing. And it does take courage, and it takes effort it takes probably as much effort and more courage to walk away from an okay relationship than it does to stay. It doesn't take any courage. It doesn't take a lot of effort to stay. It's separating yourself from the poor relationships that can be very difficult, especially if you've been there for a little while. And I've talked to many people over the years that they've spent 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, 8 years in a mediocre relationship. She wants him to change. He wants her to change. And, nothing happens. And then there's the relationships where one party says, yeah, I promise I'll do better. And they make a limited effort for a short period of time. And then they start falling back into their old routines. So so it becomes difficult to try to maintain a relationship when there's this constant pushing and pulling of trying to make that relationship work. Hey, Sharon, thanks for joining in. I'm having a great day, although it's a little chilly here. Hola, Maria. Hope you're having a great day. Henrietta, thank you for joining in. How are you doing today? So those are again, these are just random thoughts today. If you guys have comments or thoughts of your own, and join in and let me know. Let's see. Here's another one, and I just had a comment about this the other day, over the weekend, and it's about, don't be afraid of online dating. don't let it's Henrietta says, it's rough being a widower, and yes, it is. I don't disagree with that at all. The widows that I've worked with all have had it's much more difficult to be a widow or widower, I believe, than it is to be divorced. Now, and part of the reason is that you really have no say in the issue, whereas divorce, you can try to work on it, or in a relationship, you can try to work on it. It may end up in divorce. It may not be what you want, but you still have some voice in it. Whereas when your spouse dies, you have no say. You really have no control over it. And it takes, in my experience, it takes longer for widows and widowers to get past or get through the grieving process. It's just a much different grieving process than being divorced. And don't miss. And Henrietta says death is final. That's absolutely right. So it's the one thing that I always encourage widows and widowers to do is to take their time. It takes 4 to 5 years to get through the grieving process and the healing process and growing and finding out who you are again. Whereas when you get divorced, there's typically a separation time and you have time to prepare, and you can start exploring a new life. Even though you may still be married, you can start exploring a new relationship or new experiences. Not I don't encourage dating while you're still married. That can create problems, but there are huge differences. Kathy says, what do you think key red flags are? That's a great question, Kathy. And I'll jump into that. Hey, Barbara, thanks for joining in today. Some of the key red flags obviously are going to be physical, verbal abuse, and everybody's red flags are different. There are obviously drug addiction or alcohol abuse they'd be huge red flags for me. Now, alcohol or drug abuse may not be a problem for some people if you're a drug and alcohol abuser. But if you want a healthy relationship, you can't be with somebody that's abusing alcohol or drugs. So in my opinion, you have to be on the same page spiritually. If you're not, that's going to be to me, that's a huge red flag. I mean, if we're not going to church together, then that's going to put a major roadblock in the relationship, or a major hurdle in the relationship. And I guess probably to give you a little more of a general answer, Kathy, is that a red flag, and like I say, they're different for everyone, because we all have different preferences. Some things that I find offensive or are a no-go are just fine with somebody else. So I guess the best way to describe red flags are going to be things that you don't want to live with. If you don't want to be with a smoker, then if you meet somebody that's a smoker, that should be a red flag. In spite of the fact that they may say, "Oh yeah, I'm trying to quit. Okay, come back in 2, 3, 5 years when you've been smoke free for that long. Kathy, I hope that answers your question. My red flags are going to be different than yours. And yours are going to be different than the next person's. We all have our own personal preferences as to what we want in a relationship, and those are the things. Those are the keys that you have to pay attention to. Deborah says, 10 years. Here, let me Got too many things going on here. Deborah says, 10 years post divorce, I realize I'm in a different place than others post 1 or 2 years. It is more difficult to find someone in a healthy place in the dating field. I believe there is a lot of fun and life to live. So being selective, and that's exactly right. You need to be selective. And I think the longer you're divorced or the longer you're widowed, it does, you do become a little more set in your ways, but you've had more life experiences. It's not like we're 20 years old and we don't have any significant life experience, and we can dive into a relationship and learn from each other and grow with each other. When you get to be 40s, 50s, 60s, it becomes the field narrows, so to speak, based on what your interests are, what you want in a relationship, and what you won't put up with. So I think we should naturally become more selective. That bar that we set for our relationships should be going up, and it should be going up with all of our experiences. Henrietta says, I'm dating in a world. I'm dating. The world is different. How does one accept change? I won't and don't accept drugs. Little alcohol is fine. Well, see, you're already on track there, Henrietta. It's the world. The world today. I don't know, and you don't have to tell me your age. But in the last 20, 30, 40, 50 years, dating has changed dramatically. It's changed dramatically even in the last 10 or 15 years. When I was first, and I've been divorced almost 11 years now. And in that 11 years, even dating online has changed dramatically. When I first got online and started exploring the world of online dating, it was very rare that a woman would say, yeah, I don't want to spend a lot of time chatting. Let's get together. That was almost unheard of. It's just, the common response 10 years ago was, yeah, let's take our time, get to know each other. And if we seem to click, we'll plan on meeting. And so there was lots of texting, lots of messaging, lots of emails, maybe some phone calls. But today, almost everyone that I meet is, yeah, I don't like texting. I don't like spending all this time messaging. Let's get together sooner rather than later. And Henrietta, I guess it's like any other change. I don't particularly like all the change the technology has brought to us, in spite of the fact that it's made life easier in so many ways. We can look at just the telephone. I remember as a very, very, very young boy, probably 3, 4, maybe 5 years old, I remember still having to ask the operator, you pick up the telephone and the operator would say, number, please. And you'd have to give a number, and then we got the rotary phone, the rotary dial phone that was hung on the kitchen wall. And, you were attached to the phone by a cord. And now, while this is on a cord, it's just charging. We can go anywhere. You can't even find a phone booth anymore, or a payphone. I mean, they are so rare and few and far between. So you have to recognize that there are changes. There are certain things that you don't have to accept in today's world that, and I was having this conversation with somebody over the last week that in today's world, there are so many men that expect to be in bed with you by the third date or by the fifth date. It's that you don't have to accept. I mean, if that's what they expect, then you can shuffle them on down the road. And a lot of these things, Henrietta, I hope I'm. And Henrietta says she only wants a good man. Absolutely. And he should have, as you date, as you meet someone, learn to just have conversational questions. You can ask about church, you can ask about politics, you can ask about so many different things. Ask about their home life, ask about their childhood, and you can start to develop a picture of who they are and what they're all about. And what do they do for a living? Where do they like to vacation? What are their hobbies? When you start asking these questions and start getting to know someone, you can start building a picture of who they are. And now I will admit there are going to be some people out there that are hucksters or con men or con women. I've run to women online that are con artists too. So it does go both ways. But you have to be discerning. And I have a number of people that tell me they're uneasy or don't like or don't trust online dating. But it's a matter of knowing how to use the tool. It's I bought a big miter saw, and the miter saw, for those of you that don't know, it's a saw that cuts wood at an angle. And this was a big one because I've got some projects coming up. And the first couple of times that I've used it, it was like, whoa, this thing has a lot of power. I'm not used to using it. I'm not a skilled carpenter. I'm not a skilled craftsman. So I have to be careful. And just like online dating, when you're not skilled at it, when you have very little experience at it, you have to be more careful. You have to learn how to read between the lines. You have to learn to watch the grammar in their text messages, because that in and of itself can be a huge sign that you're talking to somebody in another country. They may say they live in Kansas City or St. Joseph, Missouri, or St. Louis, or Oklahoma City, or wherever you're looking, Nashville, or even Aiken, South Carolina. We have to pay attention. We have to learn how to use the tool. We have to become skilled. It's online relationships represent about 30% of all relationships. So if you say that I'm not comfortable dating, you're cutting off 30% of your ability to meet someone. And I find that as a tool, it's a great tool to meet people that you wouldn't normally meet in your daily walk through life. That doesn't mean that you can't be creative, that you can't. I had a couple of comments on one of my Facebook posts several months ago, and one woman was complaining about where do you meet, and one of my friends popped in and said, go to the shooting range, go to the golf course and take golf lessons on a Saturday morning. Go where the men are. And the same thing, guys, go where the ladies are. What are they doing? Go do things that where men congregate or where women congregate. If you enjoy sports, go to sporting events. It's a little tough to do that now, with COVID rules and whatnot, but there are plenty of things to do. You have to think outside the box. You have to think of what things do you enjoy? or what things could you enjoy? And it's always, it's always eye opening sometimes when you go and do something that you've never done before. You're going to the shooting range and learning how to shoot a gun. Even if you don't like guns, learn how to shoot them so you know a little bit about them. It's a great way to meet new people and start conversations. Sharon says, let's get this here. Sharon says, I want a companion to have fun with and not get serious for a while. Well, see, and then and Sharon, you're looking for a casual relationship. And one of the biggest problems I see, and guys tend not to listen quite as much or quite as well. But you need to lay out your boundaries, your guidelines, and say, listen, I'm not ready for a relationship. I'm just looking for casual friendship, where we go out from time to time. I'm not going to be exclusive with you. If that's what you're looking for, then please pass me by. Let's do something, otherwise, if you're fine with that, let's be friends. And if something develops later on, great. But I always set the expectations up front. And ladies, guys can get really dense really quick. And we, as a gender, we tend not to listen really, really well. So ladies, don't get upset when you have to keep reminding us of what our original agreement was. And guys tend to, we start to develop connections as quickly or more quickly than you, because when we start dating, if we're enjoying it, we want to settle in and probably be a little more exclusive than what you're ready for. Now millennials, that's probably not quite the same thing. It's those the under 35, they have a whole different code of conduct and ethics. Deborah says, imperfection is fun. No one is perfect. A good heart, honest intentions, spiritual person are an amazing foundation. Imperfections exist with all of us. So not ruling out things that bug me. Hard stops are unhealthy or abusive behaviors. Absolutely. Be careful, Deborah. That all sounds great, except that not ruling out things that bug you. Just be cautious there to pay attention to what bugs you. Because if it bugs you a little now, it can bug you a whole lot later on. And it can be problematic, and it can only build and get worse over time. So just be very cautious. Be very cautious when you say you're not going to rule out things that bug you. If they're minor things like squeezing the tube of toothpaste from the bottom or squeezing it from the middle, well, you each can have your own tube. So, but if in Deborah, and I'm using you as an example here, if he's a slob and doesn't take care of his things, is that somebody that you really want in your household? Because he's not going to change just because you're a neat person. So you have to decide whether if clothes laying in the middle of the floor are going to bug you enough that it's going to create problems later on, or if you're just going to pick them up and say, yeah, okay, that's not a problem. So just be careful about what bugs you and what doesn't, and being too accepting of those things, because those things to me start to throw up red flags. Nancy says, LOL, we're from the same generation. Yeah, probably. It's yeah, I've been around the block once or twice. Let's put it that way. And Rod says, yeah, what he said. So it's, there are so many things that can trip us up, and we have to pay attention. We have to be able to communicate. We have to share when something's not going right or something's not feeling right. We have to talk about it. And unless we talk about it, we don't know. I almost made a huge mistake this weekend with a relationship that I could have destroyed that relationship very easily had we not talked. And and going back to some of the stuff that I did over the weekend, listening to Tony Robbins, there were a couple of things that tripped my trigger. And had we not talked things out, had we not spent some time thinking through and sharing, what each of us was thinking, where the other caused the other grief, where I caused her grief and she caused me grief, we never could have resolved our issues. And you cannot build a strong relationship without strong communication. And it's not always fun. It's not always, communication is not always easy. You have to fumble your way through it sometimes. But, unless you do it, unless you spend some time sharing your thoughts and ideas, and when you first do it, especially if you're quiet and generally a people pleaser, and it can be very, very high stress, high anxiety. But I guarantee you, the more you do it, and the more the better you'll get at it. And it may never, your anxiety level may never go away completely, but the more you do it, the more you open up, the more you share, the easier it gets. Now, if you're with somebody that takes your words and turns them around and uses them against you, then that's a relationship, and that goes back to a red flag. For me, that's a huge red flag, and that should be a huge red flag for all of you, because if your words are going to be used, when you're sharing something from the heart, you can't have those words used against you. If they do that, then you're not in a safe environment, at least emotionally or mentally, to be able to work on that relationship. If you can't talk, and they can't share their opinions, or they can't listen to your concerns, then that would be a reason for me to start saying, yeah, it's time to move on. Because that's not a healthy relationship, and you all should be looking for that healthy that healthy significant other, the one that makes you feel good, the one that's supportive, the one that's not critical and tearing you down, the one you want to, ladies, I know you want to feel understood. I know you want to feel secure. You want to, there's just so many things that, and men, on the other hand, don't want to be criticized. They don't want to be condemned. So it's when we learn how to communicate with each other, when we learn how to share what's on our hearts and what's on our minds, and creating a safe space, I guess, is the modern terminology, creating that safe space for your partner to share as well, without being condemning or judgmental. It's very important for extraordinary or great relationships to take place. Hey, Shar, thanks for joining in. It's all right. Shar says she missed the boat and we'll have to do a replay. Yeah, well, you can catch up for the first half. You know, we're probably 2/3 of the way through. So, but glad you're here. So anyway, we're just for those of you that have just joined in, and we're just doing some random thoughts tonight. I haven't done random thoughts in a while. Actually, it's been about 5 years since I've written about random thoughts. So I thought it would be good to do on Monday Mastery. And this was something that again was reinforced by Tony Robbins this weekend. You can't accomplish any goal unless you are crystal clear about what you want, and that goes for relationships as well. You know, and more people can tell me what they don't want, but when all you know is what you don't want, that's all you're going to find are the things that you don't want, because that's what you focus on. It's so easy to get wrapped up in all the things, when you get divorced, you always look at the bad parts. Well, I don't want somebody like this. I don't want somebody that can't talk to me. I don't want someone. Well, okay. But what is it that you do want? And most people will tell me, that's a good question. So you have to be focused there. And I know I talk about this quite a bit, but it's really the foundation of finding extraordinary in any relationship. This is a comment that I wrote about a long time ago, probably about 5 years ago. Don't let fear control your decision-making process in a relationship. We've all had relationships where we've been afraid to say something. We've been afraid to, I'll use my marriage as an example. My ex told me she didn't like my sense of humor. And from that point on, I was walking on eggshells. I didn't know what would set her off or what would upset her. And please don't misunderstand. I made my mistakes in the relationship in my marriage. So, we had mutual problems. But when you have somebody that tells you that they don't like your sense of humor, and you have to start watching what you say and what you do and what subjects you can bring up and what subjects you can't, it becomes very difficult to have a strong, healthy relationship. And if you recognize it, you've said something and your partner won't acknowledge it. For example, I could read my ex-wife's face like a book, and I could see when she was upset, and when I asked what was wrong, she'd say nothing. And we'd banter this back and forth, a few times, and I'd finally have to drop it. Rather than trying to talk through it and move forward, it just kind of got put off on the side. And I said, okay, whatever. And she'd go off and do her thing, and I'd do mine. And then a month, 6 weeks, 2 months later, it would all come spewing out. And it was just like a volcano of anger and upset. And I'm sure some of you have experienced that. And it's like, why didn't you tell me that 6 weeks ago when I asked you what was wrong? Well, I didn't know. And, in reality, she didn't know how to express it. And that frustrated me because I could see there was something wrong. So, and it goes back to the communication. If you can't communicate, it becomes really difficult to build and maintain an extraordinary relationship. Sharon says, I believe that communication is the most important part of a relationship. From there, you can either explore and build or end it respectfully. Absolutely. Absolutely. And again, just and I like the way you put that, Sharon. It's explore and build. That's exactly what you need to do. And that should be an ongoing process. You should always we should always be exploring what our partner wants, what sharing with our partner, and finding out more about them. Uh, I there were things that even with my ex-wife, there were things that I didn't know about her until I asked for a divorce. It was a constant. It's a constant exploring and growing and building. And especially when you can find things in common, the more things you have in common, the stronger that bond is going to be. And if your partner has hobbies or interests that you're unfamiliar with, well, spend some time learning about those hobbies or those interests. And you may not enjoy them, but if you're with your soulmate, I guarantee that you're going to start taking an interest, even passively, to make sure that if you even take a passive interest, you're going to build a stronger, more cohesive relationship. Let's see. Jacqueline, thank you for joining in. Communicating efficiently will avoid or solve half the issues in your relationship. Clearer communication can mend the differences and give you clarity about your partner and the relationship. Communication is not just verbal. It's also nonverbal, as well as we all know, actions speak volumes. Working on your bit can only strengthen your relationship. 2, compromise. 2 people can make a relationship, and it is 2 people's contribution that builds the relationship stronger and holds the that's where it ended. And there you have it. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Communication is what builds, and you can learn to compromise. But I always have a problem with the word compromise, just because, and that's me. Because so many times when we compromise, we're giving of ourselves or giving up a portion, and if it's a shared compromise, great. But if it's compromising in one direction, where let's say Jacqueline wants to go someplace and I want to go someplace else, and I always get to go where I want to go. That's not a sorry, no problem, Jacqueline. Jacqueline says, sorry, Rick. That's no problem. That's not a good compromise for Jacqueline. It should be a two-way street. And I know a lot of relationships where especially the lady always compromises what she wants in order to keep her husband happy or her man happy. Oh, that didn't work well. Oh, that didn't work well. Excuse me. Let's see. Difficulties. Standing strong through thick and thin is not just something that's said for effect at weddings. It has a deeper place in both the partners' lives. It means putting each other and the relationship first when it comes to managing difficult times and coming out of it victorious. And also giving each other the required time and space to grow, both individually and as a couple, while making your bond more enriching and fulfilling. Absolutely. That's exactly right. It has to be for the benefit of both. And excuse me here. And unless you're working for the betterment of the relationship, and sometimes the betterment of the relationship means that one partner will use goes back to school while the other partner, while the other person supports the household, for example. It's a give and take, and unless you have that give and take, and unless you're supportive of your partner, it becomes very difficult to maintain a relationship. And I have a friend that just literally does things on her own because her husband isn't supportive. He doesn't want to do anything that she wants to do. He'd rather just sit home and watch TV. So, I mean, and she doesn't want to get a divorce. I mean, so, and I don't know that sitting home and watching TV is grounds for divorce, but the point is, over time, the animosity and even anger can build up, and frustration that it's one person seems to be doing all the giving and one seems to be doing all the taking. Now, if you walk into a relationship or into a marriage and that's the way you recognize and that's the way you're comfortable with doing things, great. But if not, then you need to recognize those things early on, and you need to be able to recognize the give and take. And we'll go back to compromising. Again, I have a small problem with the word compromise, because again, it's typically, at least the dictionary definition, and where I see that word most often is that one person gets the better end of the deal, and it shouldn't be that way. And the other aspect is, you should never compromise your values or your morals for a relationship. Never. When you start doing that, you start losing yourself to the relationship, and you never want to do that. That's toxic to you right out of the chute. And there's, and when you're in a relationship and your partner starts wanting you to compromise those core values of yours, that should be another huge red flag. That's one that you should never tolerate, because once you start going down that road, you compromise another value, another, and another, and pretty soon you've lost yourself to this relationship, and it literally takes years to find yourself again and regain who you were originally before that relationship. So those are some of the things that you need to keep in perspective. So anyway, Jacqueline, thank you. Those are great comments. I want to thank everybody. We're coming up on the hour, and Deborah, I hope we've answered some of your questions or some of your thoughts. Sharon, Henrietta, I hope we've been helpful. Maria, Sophie, I'm sorry. Lois, Sherry, hope you all enjoyed today. I know I'm missing a couple of you, and I'm sure there's a couple of you that Henrietta, Rod, Shar, hope you're still hanging around. Anyway, I hope you have a great and blessed week. I will be in Michigan next Monday, so we'll have Monday Mastery live at 5 from Ironwood, Michigan. So in the meantime, I hope this was beneficial for you all. I hope my random thoughts, we may pick this up on Random Thoughts again next week. This was this was it was fun for me. I hope it was fun for you. There's lots of great comments and lots of great participation. So anyway, I hope you have a great and blessed week, everyone. I love you all, and thanks for being here. And I will see you next week from Ironwood.